On a scorching hot day, a young man named Chul Soo was seen working as a construction laborer, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was just like a goblin, weak and insignificant, someone who belonged in a low-level dungeon, a creature that could never hope to escape it. While others were winning the lottery and becoming rich overnight, a goblin was still just a goblin. No matter how much EXP he gained, he would always remain the same. During his break, Chul Soo overheard some workers chatting. They were gossiping about Old Man Cha, saying he'd been skipping work because he was too busy playing a VR game called Heaven's Door. Rumor had it he had gotten a hidden class. Because of that, they figured he was making a fortune. Lucky old man. Heaven's Door was a cutting-edge, full-dive virtual reality game that had taken the world by storm. The combat experience felt so real that many players lost themselves in it, forgetting about real life altogether. Unsurprisingly, it came with a hefty price tag thanks to its state-of-the-art technology. But thanks to internet cafes that kept up with the latest trends, even someone poor like Chul Soo could play. The demand was so high, the game's influence began to bleed into the real world. In-game items could be converted into real-world currency, making actual money flow into the game. Heaven's Door was changing everything. At first, Chul Soo enjoyed the game. But that was just the beginning. Before long, he ended up becoming a miner, just a worthless player, spending every day digging for ore. The repetitive grind nearly drove him insane. Even now, he was still drowning in loan debt. With all the suffering he endured, he grew to hate Heaven's Door. He wondered what happened to the promises the game made, becoming a legendary hero, dating beautiful party members, getting married. But no matter how much cursed or he mined, all he ever got was junk. And more junk. Then, something unexpected happened. He paused when he discovered a green healing crystal. If he sold it on the market, it would fetch at least 300,000 won. For once, he felt genuinely happy, grateful even, for the existence of Heaven's Door. He even started licking the crystal in awe. As he was admiring the crystal, he was startled by someone's arrival. A beautiful woman had approached him. She told Chul Soo that he must have been mining all day. His mining skill must be pretty high. Chul Soo confirmed it, but asked why she was talking to him. The woman explained that her party was exploring a dungeon, but a large boulder was blocking their path. While her teammates were strong, none of them knew a thing about mining. She was hoping to find an experienced miner who could help them out. After hearing her out, Chul Soo told her he was indeed skilled in mining. However, his level was too low to safely enter a dungeon, so he had to turn her down. But then, the dwarf in her party chimed in, saying they'd take care of the monsters. All Chul Soo had to do was follow from behind and mine the ore. Hearing that, Chul Soo gave it some serious thought. If he joined their party, he'd probably earn some EXP, and maybe even get his hands on some high-tier ore. So going on a dungeon expedition didn't seem like such a bad idea. But would he be safe inside? Sure, he could respawn after dying in the game, but still, there were some real dangers in Heaven's Door. As Chul Soo was weighing his options, the woman suddenly grabbed his arm. She apologized for being so forward, saying her ideal type was a man with strong arms. Who could mine? So, if Chul Soo didn't want to come, that was totally fine. But instinctively, Chul Soo blurted out that he'd go with her. The moment he joined their party, though, regret hit him hard. Could he really handle this? When they encountered a level 7 Grey Wolf, Chul Soo quickly realized the monsters were a bit weaker than he'd expected. But unfortunately, his own level was even lower. So, when the wolf lunged at him, he was completely defenseless. But just before it struck, the woman who had invited him unleashed a powerful skill. Salamander Flame. In a flash, the monsters were wiped out. She turned to Chul Soo and asked if he was okay, if he was hurt. That woman's name was Catherine Lee, a level 39 magician. Grateful for her concern, Chul Soo thanked her. He was still in awe. She'd taken down a pack of wolves with a single attack. Then Catherine looked at him and said he had scared her, so she asked him to stay close and not wander off. Chul Soo blushed. Was this real? Did she want him by her side forever? Could this be the romance he'd always dreamed of? But then, another guy from the party cut in and told Chul Soo not to get the wrong idea. They weren't the type of people who messed around in dungeons. While easily taking down more monsters, the guy explained that their team had come to check something hidden behind a large rock, and since they were focused on combat, none of them had bothered to level up their mining skills. It just felt like a waste of stat points. That's why they needed someone like him. Chul Soo paused at those words. Someone like me? Did that guy think he was just some clueless extra? In truth, they wouldn't be able to mine a single ore without him. But in the end, Chul Soo couldn't really argue. Did that guy think I didn't have any combat skills? Well, of course, I don't. That's why I mine every single day. And so, powerless to deny it, Chul Soo followed along with the party's plan. Meanwhile, the dwarf standing beside the man asked if he was sure the information he had was accurate. Because if there was nothing behind the massive rock, the loss wouldn't be small. The man simply replied, "Just pray everything goes smoothly. If it doesn't, I'm gonna beat you for wasting our time in this trash dungeon." Chul Soo, still focused on mining, kept chipping away at the rock. He was used to being looked down on, risking his life just for pocket money. He was so used to it, in fact, that he couldn't even vent his anger anymore, and that was exactly what made him angry. So he tried to stay calm and get the job done like usual. Once he got paid, he'd move on and continue his boring daily grind. Eventually, after hammering away, the giant rock finally crumbled, and behind it was a massive door. Chul Soo quickly told the party, "We found a hidden dungeon," which meant rare rewards, a potential class change to a hidden class, and an overall huge score for the group. But just as he celebrated, Catherine looked at him and asked, "What do you mean we?" Right after that, the man next to him suddenly struck Chul Soo, triggering PK mode. The blow knocked Chul Soo to the ground, helpless. He could barely breathe. Catherine coldly told him that she didn't need some dumb mining skill to access the dungeon, so he might as well shut up and accept his death. Hearing that, Chul Soo was furious. Those three, they were complete cowards. They knew about the hidden dungeon from the start, but even though he was furious, he couldn't fight back. He was just one miner against three trained fighters. Then the man leaned in and whispered to him, "You really thought we came to this low-tier dungeon just to have fun? Now that you've helped us, we'll give you a special reward." And with that, Chul Soo was launched into the air. Sometime later, he finally regained consciousness. As he opened his eyes, he wondered if he was still in the dungeon. Did they not kill him? Maybe they had at least a bit of decency left. But just then, a notification popped up. Advanced healing crystal used. Revived with 100% HP after fatal damage. His crystal had activated. He had died. Chul Soo was furious. That crystal cost him 300,000 won. And now, it was gone. He let out a cry of frustration, but then noticed the dungeon door was still open. That meant the dungeon hadn't been cleared yet. Fueled by rage, he swore to make them pay for what they'd done. Even without combat skills, he'd crush that three-person party and turn his life around. Those arrogant jerks who looked down on him, he would become their worst nightmare. With that fire in his heart, Chul Soo charged toward the dungeon entrance, only to immediately fall down some stairs he hadn't seen. And now, his HP was down to just 20. But as he stepped deeper into the dungeon, he realized this wasn't just any dungeon. It was a hidden dungeon. Looking around, he found himself in what appeared to be a goblin temple. He spotted a giant statue and wondered, was that supposed to be a goblin on the throne? According to the dungeon info, were goblins really the only enemies here? Wasn't a hidden dungeon supposed to be tougher than this? If goblins were all he had to deal with, then this might actually be an easy ride. But as he walked deeper into the dungeon, Chul Soo couldn't help but feel confused. Why was it so eerily quiet? And where were those bastards now? While walking, he suddenly kicked something. Looking down, he was completely shocked. It was the dwarf from earlier, dead, in a gruesome state. Seeing the dwarf's corpse, Chul Soo figured he must have been thrown all the way to the village. But as he processed what happened, a system warning popped up in front of him. Warning, this is a hidden dungeon with the highest difficulty, far beyond your level. Please exit immediately. Reading that, Chul Soo was baffled. How could a goblin dungeon be classified as the highest difficulty? But before he could think more, he suddenly heard someone screaming. Recognizing the voice as one of the bastards, Chul Soo turned toward the sound, only to see that the man and Catherine Lee were completely overwhelmed, facing a level 80 Geiger monster. Seeing the creature, Chul Soo was stunned. Wasn't this supposed to be a goblin dungeon? Then what the hell were they fighting right now? A level 80 monster? Was the game system playing some kind of sick joke? While he watched, the Geiger monster devoured the man in one brutal bite. With that, Chul Soo could only stand frozen in fear. The worst-case scenario had just become reality. In the world of VR gaming, there were already many games that prioritized realism, but Heaven's Door went far beyond that, implementing full sensory feedback, including the sensation of pain experienced by players. Of course, there were safety systems in place. Low-level monsters or those on par with a player wouldn't cause real pain. But if a player was attacked by something way above their level, that was a different story. Catherine, now realizing the unbearable pain she was in, cried out to Chul Soo for help. She begged him to save her, but Chul Soo replied coldly, "Why the hell should I help you? I can't even fight that thing." He knew exactly what happened if someone died to a high-level monster. The pain and trauma didn't just go away with a game respawn, the damage hit the brain directly. In more extreme cases, it could lead to brain damage, coma, or even death. That's how some people were forced to retire from gaming, shattered by shock and trauma. So, since Chul Soo still valued his life and sanity, he ran. He didn't look back at Catherine. After all, they were the ones who abandoned him first. And since he was too weak to help, there was only one thing he could do: survive, no matter what, even if it meant surviving alone. In a panic, Chul Soo kept running like mad from the monster. While fleeing, another notification popped up. The Goblin Lord senses a strange kinship with your cowardice and weakness. Seeing the notification, Chul Soo couldn't help but wonder, was the Goblin Lord trying to send him a message? Was he really weak and a coward? Annoyed by the mockery, Chul Soo shouted at the goblin statue. Did the Goblin Lord think he wanted to be this way? Did he choose to be weak? If he had even a bit of strength, he wouldn't be running away like this. Of course, Chul Soo had plenty of desires. He wanted a proper job where no one would look down on him. He wanted to fight monsters, not mine rocks all day. He wanted powerful skills, like everyone else. But because of the debt left behind by parents he never even knew, Chul Soo grew up unable to pursue anything he actually wanted. And now, a goblin who calls himself the Goblin Lord had the nerve to call him weak? Why should he be insulted for that? It wasn't even his fault. Frustrated, Chul Soo yelled at the statue again. Who do you think you are, sitting on your crumbling throne, looking down on others? You're just a goblin. With the suffering and humiliation he faced in the real world, and now the insults inside this game, even a statue was pitying him now. That's when it truly hit him. Maybe he really was like a pathetic goblin. Still angry, Chul Soo mocked the statue again, saying, "You're even lower than a human who resembles a goblin." As he vented his frustrations, another notification appeared in front of him. You are now an honorable goblin. All goblins will now assist you at any time. You have met the requirements to change into a hidden class. Would you like to become a Goblin Summoner? Seeing the message, Chul Soo froze in place. Had a hidden class really just appeared before him? But Goblin Summoner? Was this a joke? Frustrated, he refused the offer. But right after, another notification popped up. You are now a goblin. Class change complete. Even though Chul Soo was furious about being forced into a new class, he suddenly felt the presence of the Geiger monster crawling up behind him. In a panic, he realized it was already too late to run. With no other options, he had no choice but to put his faith in this new class. So, Chul Soo activated his skill, summoning a goblin to fight for him. With a flash of summoning energy, a goblin appeared in front of him. Seeing the small, weak-looking creature, Chul Soo couldn't help but feel disappointed. Still, he had no choice. He decided to use the goblin as bait to escape. Without hesitation, Chul Soo ordered the goblin to face the Geiger monster. He told it to defeat the creature. Just as he gave the command, the Geiger monster charged in for an attack. Knowing the battle was about to begin, Chul Soo got ready to run. But then, in a single strike, the goblin instantly killed the Geiger monster. Chul Soo stood frozen in disbelief. Suddenly, notifications began flooding his screen. His EXP was skyrocketing. He had even learned 2 new skills, Fees Goblin and Walk Goblin. Not only that, the summoned goblin had gained even more EXP, and with that, it smiled happily. Watching the goofy goblin grin from ear to ear, Chul Soo was completely speechless. Could this silly-looking goblin actually be max level? Back to an earlier moment, when Catherine's party was wiped out, she felt the pain of being trampled by the monster directly through her real body. Her scream sent her maid into a panic, desperately trying to wake her up. But the moment the maid disconnected the full dive VR, she realized something terrifying. Catherine's condition was the worst-case scenario. The pain and shockwaves that hit her brain had caused irreparable damage. This was the grim fate of those who ended up as retirees. Meanwhile, we return to Chul Soo. With the help of his goblin, he managed to level up, thanks to the goblin solo clearing the dungeon. The massacre was so intense that Chul Soo told the goblin to slow down. He couldn't carry any more dropped items. His storage was already overflowing with low-rank mana stones and wolf claws. Now, a Goblin Summoner, Chul Soo had reached level 31. Looking at his status, he was genuinely surprised. He had completed a hidden dungeon and defeated the Geiger monster, yet it was clear that his fallen comrades had no choice but to die protecting him. But the goblin, he completed the dungeon all on his own and didn't level up even once. Curious, Chul Soo checked the goblin's status, but it still wasn't available. So, for now, he had no idea what the goblin really was. He even wondered, is it possible for a low-rank goblin to be this strong? But regardless, Chul Soo didn't really care. If this was some kind of bug, then, of course, he had to take advantage of it before the system fixed it. With this goblin by his side, he wouldn't have to mine anymore. He could aim to be the best in Heaven's Door. Sometime later, at Nara Bank, Chul Soo was called up to the service counter. The teller told him that all the items he submitted, including the wolf pelts, were worth around 97,000 won. She then asked if he wanted the money transferred directly to his account. Exchanging in-game items for real currency made Chul Soo start to wonder, just how much influence did Heaven's Door have on the real world? Then, he asked the teller if it was possible to transfer the money to a different account. But he also remembered he had a few other materials he wanted to exchange, the Geiger's membrane and heart. After he handed them over, the teller began calculating the total value. But the moment she saw the result, she was completely shocked. Without hesitation, she called for the branch manager. Chul Soo, watching her leave, was confused. Why is she looking for her boss while I'm still standing here? Shortly after, the Nara Bank manager met with Chul Soo in person. He asked, "How's the tea?" Chul Soo, sipping the cold tea, replied, "It's pretty interesting." The manager chuckled. "Seems I forgot to boil the water." Brushing off the small talk, Chul Soo got straight to the point. "Why did you want to see me?" All he wanted was to exchange Heaven's Door materials for real money. The bank manager assured him it wasn't anything serious. He simply wanted to recommend a better place to store his earnings. That's why he wanted to talk face to face. He continued, "Wouldn't it be a waste to just keep all that money in a regular checking account? Here at Nara Bank, we offer some very appealing investment options." He explained that if Chul Soo put his money there, it could generate even more profit. Hearing this, Chul Soo was puzzled. Why would a bank manager go out of his way to convince someone like me, a broke guy with maybe 1,000,000 won at most, to invest? That's when the manager dropped the real bombshell. "It seems you don't realize the value of what you brought in," he said. Based on today's rates, the Geiger monster's heart and membrane are worth 230 million won. Soon after, when Chul Soo logged back into the game, he was overjoyed by his newfound wealth. Thanks to the goblin, he had managed to pay off 10% of his debt. In his excitement, he looked at the goblin and said, "Who said goblins are ugly? This little guy is actually kinda cute." But as he said that, he couldn't help but agree with everyone else. He really couldn't lie. The goblin was ugly. After celebrating his victory, Chul Soo set out to go hunting again. However, he was growing more and more annoyed by the goblin's presence. His cursed system didn't allow him to dismiss summoned creatures. As a result, everyone in town was staring at him. Other players couldn't stop gawking at the goblin. Some even whispered, questioning whether he was embarrassing all summoners. A group nearby began mocking Chul Soo, saying he looked just like the goblin he summoned. Hearing all the ridicule, Chul Soo was clearly annoyed. Sure, he might act like a goblin sometimes, but he wasn't one. Still, he chose to ignore them and just kept walking, until suddenly a buff-looking player stopped him and questioned why a goblin was roaming freely in the city. The moment people saw that man, everyone immediately recognized him. Wasn't he Patton the Annihilator from the Everton Guild? Chul Soo turned to one of the bystanders and asked, "Is he really that strong? I mean, he's got a title like the Annihilator?" Someone replied, "Nah, that's just a nickname he gave himself." Learning more about Patton, Chul Soo felt uneasy. I mean, if someone calls themselves the Annihilator, they're probably crazy. So Chul Soo shouted, "Don't attack him! That goblin isn't a monster." Unfortunately, his warning came too late. Patton had already swung his massive sword, but when the blade struck the goblin, it dealt 0 damage. In response, the goblin casually slapped Patton, killing him instantly. Luckily, since PvP mode was active, Patton didn't feel unbearable pain. But the crowd watching, they were in total shock. Did that goblin just kill someone? Now Chul Soo was starting to panic. If people found out the goblin was his summoned creature, he'd definitely be hunted down by other players. Still, someone nearby muttered, "Man, Patton the Annihilator?" More like Patton the Humiliated, getting wrecked by a goblin like that. And to make it worse, that goblin wasn't even strong enough to be worth fighting. But since the goblin had killed Patton, someone had to take responsibility for disturbing the peace of the guild. That's when Yoon-hyuk, the leader of the Everton Guild, stepped forward and pointed his sword at the goblin. Chul Soo immediately realized things were getting out of control, and while the players tried to attack the goblin, it was still completely invincible. The real problem was, if the goblin kept killing players, this would blow up into something massive. So Chul Soo quickly tried to defuse the situation. He told Yoon-hyuk, "Please, let me handle the goblin." But Yoon-hyuk just sneered and asked, "Who even are you? Nobody important should be interfering with guild business." And he warned Chul Soo, if he got involved, he'd be targeted by the entire guild. Chul Soo explained that he wasn't trying to meddle, but if Yoon-hyuk had his guild members gang up on a goblin, wouldn't that make them look weak? As Chul Soo was trying to reason with him, the goblin suddenly used a skill, throw stone. With a single rock, the goblin instantly killed Min Sung on the spot. That was the last straw. Yoon-hyuk ordered his entire guild to capture Chul Soo. Now, Chul Soo and the goblin were being chased through the city by the Everton Guild. As he ran in a panic, Chul Soo couldn't help but wonder, how the hell did things get this bad? And just then, someone shouted to him, "Hurry! Get in this room! There's no time to escape!" But as soon as Chul Soo entered the room, he immediately ran back out. Turns out, the old man who tried to save him was actually a member of the Everton Guild and had drawn his weapon on him. As Chul Soo ran away in a panic, another notification popped up in front of him. It said, "Goblin Lord is impressed by your cunning move, attacking after luring your enemy into a false sense of security. You've earned 1 goblin point." Seeing that message, Chul Soo was furious. Cunning? Seriously? First he calls me weak, then a coward. Now I'm being called sneaky? He hadn't even done anything wrong. Frustrated, Chul Soo started to question everything. Why am I the one being labeled as weak, cowardly, and cunning? They're the ones who betrayed me. They attacked me out of nowhere. If anyone deserves to be mocked, it's them. Boiling with anger, Chul Soo turned to the goblin and commanded him to listen. "This is enough. I've had it with people looking down on us goblins just because we're considered weak. From now on, he was going to destroy the Everton Guild." Meanwhile, Yoon-hyuk was still chasing after Chul Soo, and right behind him was Ji-hyun, who asked, "Are you seriously getting involved just to deal with that guy? I could have taken care of him myself." But Yoon-hyuk warned her not to underestimate him. That goblin was weird. Sure, Patton was the weakest among us, but he got one-shotted. That wasn't normal. And just as Yoon-hyuk was explaining that, he heard someone shout nearby. Suddenly, someone landed right next to him. It was Seung-ryul. But before Yoon-hyuk could process what was happening, the goblin had already appeared behind him. Sensing danger, Yoon-hyuk immediately swung his dagger. Yet even after landing a clean strike, he was stunned. There wasn't a scratch on the goblin. It was then he realized that 0 damage earlier wasn't a glitch. It wasn't just in his head. Now, standing face to face with an unstoppable goblin, Yoon-hyuk understood something chilling. He was probably going to die. But just as the goblin's punch was about to land, something blocked the attack. Even Yoon-hyuk was stunned. What just deflected that blow? It turned out to be Ji-hyun, who had arrived just in time to save him. She snapped at Yoon-hyuk. "Why are you just standing there? Were you planning to let that goblin kill you?" Her words snapped Yoon-hyuk back to his senses. Right. He was in the middle of a fight. He still couldn't understand how a low-rank monster like that could deal millions in damage. But there had to be some trick behind it. Even if he didn't know who was behind this, there was no way he'd back down against a goblin. So he activated his ultimate skill, Extreme Evil. With that, his movement speed was reduced by 90%, but in exchange, every attack he landed would become a critical hit. Seeing him activate such a powerful skill, Ji-hyun was shocked. "Why would you use your ultimate on just a goblin?" But Yoon-hyuk explained, "It's fine. My ultimate is basically passive anyway. With one clean hit, I'll take him out. Then I'll finish off the other target." Ji-hyun realized there was no point arguing. She just told him to end it quickly, before a crowd started forming. As support, she used her skill Gale Arrow, which removed all movement speed debuffs from her target. Now, fully buffed, Yoon-hyuk was ready to end the goblin once and for all. With assassin-like precision, he dashed forward and slashed with his dagger. But then, 0 damage. Yoon-hyuk was floored. There's no way that didn't land. How could it do nothing? The goblin, seeing Yoon-hyuk's shocked expression, simply smirked, mocking him. Of course, this was the end for those who dared attack him. The next moment, Yoon-hyuk was sent flying with a massive blow, taking 999 cap damage. Ji-hyun stood frozen in disbelief. What just happened? But while she was still processing the situation, someone nearby mocked them. "Did you really think you could finish it in one hit? Maybe save that talk for when you're max level. Just give up already and quit acting so high and mighty." Now cornered, Ji-hyun couldn't help but wonder, what kind of goblin is this? Is it even the same species as the ones we know? That's when Chul Soo proudly stepped forward and replied, "You're absolutely right. That goblin is my summon." This video ends here, but the story isn't over yet. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss the next part.